Hell Let Loose's Update 18 has been here for a bit now, and it's safe to say there are plenty of mixed opinions about it and plenty of problems. I'm going to go through it and let you know what I think is good, what I think is bad, and what I think is ugly, so stick around.
What did he say his name was?
Gebatron.
So before we dive in, I just want to say that these are my opinions and you are free to have yours, so let us know what they are down in the comments. As I said, this update seems to have had a pretty mixed reception with a lot of glaring issues, so I do expect a diverse range of opinions down there. Let's discuss them and remember to keep it civil. The first thing I'm going to mention is all good, and that's the new Hell Let Loose Armor Hub website spearheaded by Rasbora with help from Winston and Fresh Baked Goods. This site is great for a refresher, but especially great if just straight knowledge about armor and Hell Let Loose is the hurdle you need to get over to start tanking. Here we have the home page with helpful videos. Next page is getting started with all the basics to eliminate the learning curve, where you can learn the roles, how tank health works, what threatens your armor, and some best practices. Next is the tank database, where you can become familiar with names and stats. A page dedicated to ranging, which will include self-propelled artillery info once that releases. A page to help with IDing tanks, and of course links to all things Raz, as well as some associates on the community page. Something else that I should mention here is, you know how all those armor changes were laid out in great detail here in the Update 18 changelog? Well, that was Rasbora who pushed for that. Now that helped him build this site, but it also let you and I know what was changing without having to spend hours testing it, or only allowing certain communities to know those details. So huge shout out to Winston, Fresh Baked Goods, and Rasbora especially for putting in the time and effort on this. Last thing I'll mention is here at the top left, where it says World War II. If we click on that, we'll get the Hell Let Loose Vietnam version, and while there isn't much here right now, make sure to check back if you plan on playing Vietnam. So thanks again, guys. Links to Raz's YouTube at the top right. Okay, let's just start at the top of the changelog with the Stalingrad refresh. I think this has been by and large really good. Just way too many changes to list out, but we get a couple point size and location adjustments, new lighting, adjustments to terrain, skirmish mode, etc. The things I find most impactful here is how cover has been added in those areas with longer sight lines, while still opening up more avenues of approach to key areas, all while keeping the feel of the map more or less the same. It plays better now, and most importantly, it performs better now. If I had to complain about anything here, it would be the fog. I'm not sure why we need fog all the time, but that's really it. My ill-informed theory here is that fog helps reduce draw distance and reduces how many items need to be rendered, thus improving performance, which is why we see it on so many maps. Someone who knows more about that can correct me in the comments if I'm way off. Now, I'm sure we'll see more issues with floating rocks and stuff like that will pop up over time, but really nice here with Stalingrad, and I hope it ends up in more rotations now because of this refresh. And just as an aside here, since we mentioned map rotations, server owners, for the love of all things, diversify your map rotations. Okay. Next is the tank balancing, and I think this is mostly good too. I especially like the changes made to the Jumbo 75 with the reduction in fuel cost, and the speed changes made to the light and medium armor. I will say that this is sort of difficult to see how these changes will manifest in the game over time, but at least what I see here and what I've experienced so far, I think it's good. I think some of these ammo count changes are good as they help emphasize that specific tank's role and so on. What's bad? I don't think heavy tanks should have received a speed boost other than the Panther. I think having a larger speed disparity between these classes is something that's necessary for making those medium tanks more appealing to players. Like I said, some of these other stats are kind of hard to qualify, you know, like a gear switch time going from 0.8 seconds to 0.7 seconds and so on. But overall, I think these changes made to armor are good. Now on to terrain modifiers and tank physics, and the reason I'm putting these together is because I'm not exactly sure which one of these is causing our problems, and I suspect it's both to a degree, but driving tanks in Update 18 is maddening and basically broken to the point that you might as well just wait for the hotfix or patch or something before even getting back into it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the good. The idea of having tanks perform differently on different terrain is good. There is a reason why tanks have on-road and off-road speed ratings, and that usually has more to do with what the crew can handle and the types of mechanical problems that occur from taking such a massive vehicle and driving it fast over rough terrain than it does with the actual speed that can be obtained, but I digress. So the idea of implementing something like that in the game is good and very interesting, and will maybe help incentivize tank crews to keep their tanks on the roads for those longer trips. And it's much the same with the new physics system. You know, the improved tank models are supposed to make it easier to traverse uneven landscapes like trenches and ditches and help you get over small obstacles with less issues. The problem is that it's clear that one of these two new systems or both of these new systems are causing so many problems that tanks are almost impossible to drive. It's hard to tell what it is. You know, is it the new tank models? Are they not working properly? Are they not reacting to hitting these obstacles the way that's intended? Is what's happening with the driving something like one of your tank tracks is on the road and the other is on a different terrain type, so you're getting two different track speeds and it's throwing you off? I don't know. How many different terrain types are there, and are they affecting the speed of the tank differently? The terrain profile video that the devs put in the changelog showcases dirt/grass, snow, which appears to have some slipperiness to it, then gravel/rubble, but it doesn't say if they all affect speed or handling the same way. So these two systems are good on paper, but holy shit, something isn't right and it's bad. Like unplayable bad, and that's a real disappointment, as better physics was supposed to be a major part of this armor rework. I like the introduction of the firing knockback force. I think it will make gunning a little more challenging, specifically when acquiring those follow-up shots on moving targets or when you are firing on the move. I don't like how it looks. It doesn't look smooth to me from the inside. From the outside, I think it's fine, but it feels rigid and it just really reminds me I'm playing a video game. On top of that, we are told that the camera shakes are new for each different class of tank, but they all feel the same to me, so I'm glad this is here, but I would like it refined a bit. Contextual repairs I think is huge, as the way repairs had worked in the game always rubbed me the wrong way and were just way too simple. So if you don't know, before you could repair the tank from anywhere, no matter what module was damaged, and there was also no way to choose which module you wanted to repair. That has been changed, so now you can pick which module to repair, and you have to physically interact with that module. So no more repairing your engine from the front of the tank or whatever. You are also no longer able to move while repairing. You can still look around, use free look, crouch, and go prone, but in order to change location, you will have to stop repairing, move to where you want to be, and then continue. Allowing players the ability to prioritize which modules they want or need to repair first is huge for tactical play, let alone that it helps the game feel a little more grounded in reality. This is a really good and long overdue addition to Hell Let Loose. Only thing I'd change here is when it shows us the percentage of repairs. I'd rather see the percentage of the module I'm repairing rather than that of the whole tank. Excellent new mechanic though. People seem to be torn on the heavy tank limit of only 2 at a time, and I haven't really made up my mind about it, to be honest. On one hand, I think it accomplishes its goal of making heavy tanks more rare and more impactful when they are on the field. But if that isn't coupled with a commander that's aware of who's using armor well, it can lead to your team not having any heavies available while the enemy is just cleaning house. It also can lead to tank crews just sitting doing nothing for 10 minutes just because they only want to use a heavy and they don't want to miss their one shot at getting one by being in a different tank when it's available. And on top of that, again, you'll have some players that just will rarely ever be allowed in a heavy tank, and that's no fun. On the other hand, I think the only other option is to remove the 2 heavy tank limit and significantly increase fuel cost and or cooldown. This might help achieve that rarity again, but it might eventually lead to the same problem if your commander is waiting to only spawn those heavies. And if they cost too much, there might not even be enough fuel left for other classes of tanks. The only thing that seems really appealing about the second option is that at least it's dependent on your team's ability to build and maintain nodes rather than just a hard limit. But either way isn't a perfect solution, if you ask me. The way it stands, I'm willing to see how this limit works at least until update 19 is ready. I'm really curious to hear what you all think of this though, so put your opinion down in the comments. Anti-tank adjustments to me is a double-edged sword. Something that I thought was necessary for this armor rework was to make tank combat last a little longer, and that was going to require adjustments to tank-on-tank combat as well as anti-tank weapons. The good part here is that I think the changes made to the tanks and the infantry AT weapons have accomplished that to some degree. However, that does lead to the problem of de-emphasizing anti-tank weapons as the best weapons to take on armor. If you guys have watched my channel for any length of time, you'll know I'm not a big fan of satchels being used as an anti-tank weapon, especially against the heavy tanks, and making it more difficult to destroy enemy armor with dedicated anti-tank weapons makes satchels even more appealing than they were before. I think what I'd rather see here is an ammo count change instead of a change in how many rockets it takes to destroy tanks. As far as anti-tank rifles go, I think the only class of tank the anti-tank rifle should actually be able to destroy are the light tanks. Everything else, they should only be able to destroy individual modules. So, come at me in the comments over that. But so yeah, I'm not really sure how to make tank combat last a little longer while also emphasizing that anti-tank weapons should be the preferred way to take out tanks. And the only thing I can think of is to adjust ammo counts. Let me know what you think. Oh, and since we were talking about satchels, it seems that something with the tank model updates has bugged satchel placement too, so just another thing we need addressed. I don't have much good to say about the new technician loadout, but it is good that there is a new loadout in the armor crew. It is also good that there is a way for armor to get ammo without having to go all the way back to the HQ, because something that would happen before is that tank crews would just abandon a perfectly good tank at the front line and redeploy back to the HQ just to get a new tank that had ammo, because it would just take too long to go back and forth. I also think it's okay that there is a loadout capable of building, a couple barricades in the armor crew too. Unfortunately, I think it's bad that the armor crew can now operate more independently in addressing their logistical needs. I also think it's bad that they can build their own repair stations, because that will become an exploit. Your 3 crew members can rotate loadouts, and the next thing you know, you have a tank that can't be destroyed. Another big issue here is with the ammo depot, and you don't have any control over what type of ammo you are getting from the ammo crane. The amount of ammo you can get from it is limited to 9 units total, which I think is too low, but I do like that it is limited. But if you're not allowed to prioritize which ammo you're getting, then you're going to have to jump through a bunch of hoops, and that's just not fun, and it doesn't allow you to make a tactical choice. Just in case you don't know, it will fill up your MG and AP ammo first, and then HE ammo only after those have been completely filled. This really sucks if you fired, say, 10 or 15 AP rounds, but completely ran out of HE rounds because, you've been doing a lot of infantry support. We need to be able to pick what ammo type we want and how many of each we get, or at the very least, we need 2 different types of ammo cranes so we can build the one or ones we specifically need. So I think this loadout needs changes, because as it stands, it de-emphasizes teamwork, introduces exploits, and doesn't allow you to get what you need out of it. Salvaging Rex is a pretty, gray addition if you ask me, but there is some good here. The biggest good is that it gives players an opportunity to use their hammer, which for some roles, that opportunity does not arise very often. The second good thing is that, it's not insignificant. It might seem that way at first glance, but you get 10% of the fuel cost back for whatever wreck you salvage. So if the tank costs 200 fuel, salvaging gives you 20 fuel back. If the tank costs 600 fuel, you get 60 back. You get 10 fuel for trucks, and it doesn't matter if the commander spawned them in or if they're default vehicles. If your team salvages a couple heavy tanks, then you just bought your team a truck with 20 fuel to spare. Salvaging a couple mediums and you're just shy of a supply drop. So over the course of a match, this has the potential to make a bit of a difference. The bad part here is that as long as we have some nodes, this really shouldn't be a problem anyway. I'm not going to send my squad out into a dangerous area specifically to salvage a tank. I'm not going to put myself at risk for salvaging a tank, and I can't really recommend you do either. Having said that, there is enough of a benefit here to try and salvage a few wrecks over the course of a match when it's not really dangerous to do so. So not a super engaging mechanic, but probably a net positive in the end. Skins for our tanks is fantastic. I'm stoked this is finally a thing in Hell Let Loose. Great addition. Now the bad. There is a bug that allows the outline of the tank that's having its skin applied to be visible even to the enemy team. I am allowed to place my skin on multiple tanks at a time, which I don't like. And right now, for Update 18, I'm okay with this being a paid DLC exclusive thing. But I'd really like to see this be a free unlock in Update 19. Just one free one so that players who don't want to buy multiple skin packs can also engage in this, even if it's just limited. I thought the audio changes were largely underwhelming, and there are some bugs here too. Best part here is where they fixed how goofy it would sound when both the tank driver and the gunner simultaneously fired their MGs. But other than that, I don't know what to tell you. They say the impacts and deflections have increased attenuation and volume, and that might be the case, but it's still the same sound. The volume levels pass of tank engine interior and exteriors is bugged, where sometimes you don't hear anything at all. The gear grinding is kind of a neat addition, but it doesn't sound great. Plus, it's random. I mean, I think it would make more sense if there was like a window where we had to shift in to get like the maximum shift speed, and if we missed that window, we got the gear grind, but it's just random. And they say they added sound effects when changing or applying custom cosmetics, and I mean, okay. So I think this is, overall pretty bad. We didn't get much here, and half of what we got was bugged out anyway. It's also really hard to say anything good about the new commander ability, Artillery Strike. It blows my mind that they introduced this before removing static artillery. I know that Update 19 is coming pretty soon, and that's going to introduce, self-propelled artillery. And I think what's going to happen is they're going to remove static artillery at that time, and then we'll have, the commander call-in plus the self-propelled artillery. But in the meantime, we're going to have to deal with just constant artillery barrages. On top of that, the artillery strike can destroy garrisons where static artillery cannot. Then you're also able to have 3 separate artillery strikes at a time, which means that if you know, or even just suspect, where 3 enemy garrisons are, you can take all of them out in one fell swoop. And that is game changing. And not game changing in a good way, game changing in like a steamroll bad way. Then on top of that, I think the cooldown is too short. I mean, by the time the artillery strike is done firing, you're really close to getting another one. And I mean, we're talking about a lot of artillery here. This should not have been introduced until Update 19. It should have gotten more testing, and the testing it did get, this feedback was provided. So there was time to fix these issues before this was released. I know that Artillery Strike as a commander ability has been something the community has been clamoring to get for a really long time, but not like this. The admin cam changes are going to be good once the bugs are fixed, so you're now able to see both teams on the TAC map instead of just on the field, which is good, but you are unable to tell like the spawns apart. So if you have a garrison from each team near each other, you can't tell at a glance whose is whose, so that's got to be fixed. So this will be good, but as it stands right now, it's not. Invite-only squads are a nice quality of life improvement so squad leaders don't get spammed with requests anymore. However, I hope this doesn't just get used as a way for selfish players to start a squad and not have to interact with the rest of the team. I don't see this becoming a problem on private servers with active admins, but it might be a little frustrating on public servers. But overall, a decent change. Aim down sights, field of view, not too worried about it, but it's nice to have options, and they prevented this from exceeding the base FOV value as to prevent exploits, so this is good. Picking up supplies actually works different than it's written in the changelog in regards to this part here, where it says the supply box cannot be picked up if any of the supplies have been used, subject to change. This actually has been changed since the PTE, and you are now able to pick up supplies even if some have been used. However, the box will be on cooldown for a period of time that reflects the amount of supplies used. So if, say, your supplies are used to build barbed wire, that only uses 10 supplies, then you pick them up, they will still be on cooldown, but only for a very short period of time. If your supplies are used to build a barricade, which uses 25 supplies, when you pick them up, there will be about half of the cooldown before you can set them down again. The first good thing about this is that the developers did listen to some feedback about this and changed it from the way it worked in the PTE. The second good thing about this is that now I'm able to actually pick up my supplies and move somewhere else and help build in a larger radius, which happens a lot when engineers are trying to place things like barbed wire and barricades around like a strong point. This adds value to the role and allows me to utilize teamwork, which is what it's all about. The only thing bad here is that it it does seem a little inconsistent. There was one time where we built barbed wire and then, I picked the box back up and the cooldown was about 30 seconds. Then the next time we built barbed wire, I picked it back up and the cooldown was like 3 seconds. So it seems a little inconsistent. So I'd like to see that fixed, and it's really unfortunate that the changelog didn't get updated to reflect how this actually works, but overall, this is excellent. Enemy supplies marker is great, but again, just implemented poorly. It's here in the wheel and the mark looks just like regular supplies, just with a thin red outline. But the biggest problem here is on the tac map, where it's almost impossible to tell at a glance that these are, in fact, enemy supplies. It tells you when you hover over it, but this is just bad design. And furthermore, the answer to our problem is already here, is when hovering over the mark, we can see the solid red supply mark, which is much easier to see and identify. Good addition, bad implementation. Fix it. The new killed in action and redeployment screens. Let me just start off by saying that I think they are gorgeous. The way that they've been redesigned and there's that slight and slow zoom, I think that looks really good. But there's just too much useless and non-detailed information here that I either already know or just don't care about. Seeing the name of someone who killed you doesn't really do anything for you, and it's a shared feature with games that players think they are distancing themselves from by playing Hell Let Loose in the first place. Then it tells you what you were killed by, but mostly with no detail. If it said killed by MP40, maybe there would be some value, as I could at least learn what an MP40 sounds like if I didn't already know, but it just says small arms, and I already know that's what killed me. Then finally there's the bit telling you how long you were alive before you were killed, and it's just useless info cluttering the screen. Get rid of it. As far as the new redeployment screen goes, I guess having redeployed up there instead of killed in actions, makes people feel better for offing themselves, so that's fine. But I just don't care how long I was alive before I did this. I redeployed when I needed to redeploy, whether it was 1 minute of being alive or 5 minutes of being alive or 30 seconds. Just get it off the screen. So either get rid of this useless info or give me some info that will add value. Once you've done that, the redesign will be pretty good, but it isn't now. The network icons, whether you're experiencing packet loss or have some connection issues, I could see that having value for players who are struggling with some performance by giving them a clue as to, that maybe switching servers would be beneficial. So that's good. Visual effects improvements are mostly good. I've long asked for different types of explosions for different types of vehicles and having some randomization on those very explosions, and that's exactly what we got. So I am happy about that. However, I do feel like these new explosions are underwhelming. I think they look good. They have good contrast and there's nice color depth there, but I don't think they are grand enough for the scale of Hell Let Loose. And I also don't think they are loud enough or audibly striking enough. I know that that is sound effects versus the visual effects, but they kind of go hand in hand here. I was really hoping that when we see a tank explode, it would be sort of awe-inspiring, and I'm not getting that. But we did get different types of explosions and some randomization here, so a really good first step. I just, they need to continue to improve on this. More dynamic weather updates is always nothing but good. Before we get into the ugly, I just want to mention two other things that I don't like here. First is that your commander orders no longer show up where you last placed them on the map, requiring you to place them every time. While a lot of these orders need to be moved around anyway, it was always nice to be able to drop supplies or recon a couple of times in a row without necessarily having to take the extra step of clicking the map. I'd like that reverted if it was a choice and fixed if it's a bug. And second is something that is just absent, and that's the addition of the ability to change ammo type in the tank without having to first empty the chamber. This was highly requested, and it's disappointing to not see it be a part of the armor update so far, as it should have been high on the priority list. So that's what I think is good and what I think is bad about Update 18. Now let's talk about what's ugly. First is the crashing and the server issues. I let it slide last time with my patch 17.1 review because every so often this does happen. It happened with Black Matter, it's happened with Expression a few times, so it's not entirely out of the ordinary. However, it's become too frequent and the scale of the problems is really unacceptable this time. One of the reasons I don't have a lot of testing footage here is because for a while, I didn't didn't even have control over my own server to switch teams and stuff because our con, or remote console, was all messed up. I couldn't connect, and neither could any of the other server owners. We were all having trouble with this to some degree. Then once things were at least halfway patched up on server side, it really didn't matter because halfway into setting up a test, I would crash in my own server with just me and my other account. Just awful. Another ugly thing has to do with what I perceive to be a lack of a cohesive vision and a lack of testing. We were told we were going to get the quote-unquote Tinkerer loadout, which we never got to test in a PTE, but then it seems that had been abandoned for the Technician loadout, which also wasn't tested, nor were we even told about it in any way, shape, or form before it was dropped on us. Now, whether you supported the Tinkerer loadout or not here really isn't the point. The point is that they worked on something for a period of time, told us about it, then completely abandoned it just to drop something on us that feels like it's only there because it was easy and quick to implement. And it was implemented poorly anyway. The whole thing leaves a bad taste in my mouth and leads me to believe that they're switching gears on the fly, that they don't have a clear vision or didn't have a clear vision for what they wanted to do with this rework or what scale they wanted it to be. Another piece of evidence towards this conclusion is that instead of getting the armor rework done in one update like the original plan was, it's now been spread out over 2 updates. Now there could be some positives to that, allowing them more time to work on stuff that maybe we don't know about or fix some of the things that were implemented here in update 18. But then again, if half the update is still to come, it's really hard to give knowledgeable feedback about what we have and how it's going to fit into that final vision. I also think it's abundantly clear that this update could have used at least one more public test, let alone private test. And one of the last ugly things I'm going to talk about is that it seems like the feedback that the team had gotten from the PTE or from the private test wasn't acted upon at all. There was a lot of feedback saying that the Artillery Strike A should not be introduced while static artillery is still on the field, and B, that the cooldown needed to be extended and or the cost needed to be increased, or both, among other feedback that wasn't heeded. I don't like having to say bad things about the work that the developers put out. Game development is not easy. I know Expression Games works hard. Having said that, this update was implemented very poorly, and there are too many problems here for me to be able to say that this was a good update. I'd also like to be able to sit here and say, well, they're going to come out and they're going to fix it. But there are still a lot of problems from update 17 and 17.1 that never got addressed. I don't think they have a choice with update 18, but based on 17 and 17.1, I think there are some design choices here that aren't going to work or that are going to work poorly that they're going to stick with whether we like it or not. It seems like they're going to try to drop update 19 before the end of the year, maybe even in November sometime, and I don't know what update 19 is all going to encompass, but I think it would be wise for them to adjust the timeline and allow update 18 to be fixed and gone through completely. Because once it is fixed, once everything works right, once you can drive the tanks, once the artillery strike is adjusted and doesn't destroy garrisons, once there are meaningful audio changes, once all the server crashing is gone through and the Archon stuff is all fixed, this will be a pretty good update, but it just isn't right now. Whew. This was an exhausting video to write, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know you guys have to wait a long time for me to get these videos out, and I really appreciate your support despite that fact. Make sure you guys put your feedback and opinions down in the comments. I really want to know where you stand on all this. Make sure to do all those YouTube things, subscribe, pull the trigger on that like button. You know how it all goes. As always, thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next one.
Auto shutdown canceled. Mic off. Mic on.